We've all been there. You go to Zillow and search for a place to rent, and you set a minimum price and a maximum price. But what do you actually put there? Well, in this video, we're covering the topic of how much rent can you actually afford by income level. By the end of the video, you'll know how much money you should spend on rent. Again, this is a personal finance topic, which means it's deeply personal, right? There are other variables that affect how much rent you should pay, but you'll have a much clearer picture of that amount by the end of this video. Obviously, housing is a huge expense for everyone. If you look at your life's balance sheet, housing is probably the most expensive expense on there. And so how much you choose to pay for rent deeply affects your overall finances and ability to save and grow your net worth. So since 1985, US rent prices have exceeded inflation by 40%. But unfortunately, rent prices have outpaced income. So yeah, the data shows that more and more people are spending a higher amount of their income on their rent. So let's first cover some of the rules that you guys can use to determine how much you can spend on rent. So there's the 30% rule, there's the 50-30-20 rule, there's the 1 week's pay rule. And yeah, while all these rules have their merits, in this video we'll be focusing more on the 30% rule. So the 30% rule suggests that individuals should spend no more than 30% of their gross income on rent. To find your gross monthly rent, all you need to look at is your most recent paycheck and then find the line called gross pay. So that's basically what you're paying before any tax, your 401k, paying any insurance, as well as any other benefits that are removed from your pay. Use that number to calculate your monthly gross pay and then multiply that by 0.3. Now, it really is not that simple, right? This rule was created in the 1980s by the US government. They found that people that paid over 30% of their income had trouble paying their other bills. But of course, that was quite a while ago. And today, while 30% is a good target, I'd say most people want to stay between 20 to 30% of their gross pay. So now let's go over this table that I created. It basically has your gross income per month on the left, and it calculates certain percentages of that income. So for example, if you're making $2,000 per month gross, we have our very safe, our target, our semi-target, our over target, and our keeping up with the Joneses percentages. The target percentage of 30% is good for most people, but for you guys, I want you to stay between the very safe and the target goals. So spending somewhere between 20 to 30% of your gross pay. That means that if you're making $2,000 per month, you should spend between $400 to $600 per month on rent. Now, these income amounts over here are your household incomes. So if you are living with your significant other, then you can basically add up both of your monthly incomes. You might be thinking, who actually spends, over target or keeping up with the Joneses percentages? Well, there are actually a good amount of people that do. It's not that common, but I hear from people all the time that are thinking, hey, I make this amount of money, but I want to spend a significant portion of that on rent. I always tell them that's not smart. You're not going to have any money left over for other things. And I really think that where most of the joy comes from in life isn't from where you live or how much you spend on rent. It's more on what you spend on activities, being able to invest, buying things for your family, right? That actually adds to a lot of people's happiness. So let's say your gross monthly income is $5,000. This means that based on this rule, you want to spend between $1,000 to $1,500 per month in rent. If your household income is $10,000 per month, then you'll want to spend between $2,000 to $3,000 per month. Now, this chart basically just shows straight percentages, but as you make more and more money, I actually think you should spend less of a percentage of your income on rent. For example, if you're making $100,000 per month, then the same rule would say you should spend between $20,000 to $30,000 per month on rent, which is absolutely insane. For income as high as that, I'd say something closer to 10% is a better rule to follow. And even then, $10,000 in rent on a $100,000 per month income is still a lot of money. But yeah, of course, there are so many other factors to consider. That is why this is such a personal topic. And while I can give you guys these guidelines, you do really need to assess your own situation. Think about what other types of bills you have. Think about what type of housing market you live in. And all that should really influence what number you decide on. For example, the cost of utilities, the cost of groceries, the cost of your transportation, what car you currently have, how much healthcare is in your area, as well as how much money you want to ultimately save for your retirement. The reason why we want to consider all these things is because if you don't consider this could have a big impact on your overall percentage, meaning the rent price plus all these other costs. And I'll just say that if you spend over around 40-45% of your total income on all of your expenses, that really doesn't leave that much money for you to actually invest and build an emergency fund, right? After you pay taxes, your income could shrink significantly. And so we really do want to have some wiggle room between your overall expenses as well as what you're actually taking home every single month. Now let's illustrate an actual example. Let's say we have someone named Joe and he makes $4,000 per month gross pay. Beyond that, he also has a car payment that is $300 per month, student loan payments of $200 a month, utility costs of $100 a month, and miscellaneous expenses of $300 a month. This means that before we even consider rent, Joe is paying $900 per month in expenses. If we do the math, that means that he's spending 22.5% of his gross monthly pay on these expenses. And if we use the rule that he should spend no more than 45% of his gross pay on all his costs, so that means he has an additional $900 he can spend on rent, bring his total cost to 45% of his gross pay. This should ensure that he still has some money left over to build his emergency fund, as well as put money into certain investments. So as you can see, having that monthly car payment, while it doesn't seem like it's that much, it actually has a huge impact on how much money you can allocate towards rent. So that's definitely something to consider if you are thinking about financing your car. It might not seem like that much. It might seem like you can definitely afford it based on your income. But if you want to be really, really financially smart, that will drastically decrease the type of place that you can afford to rent. Now let's talk about the impact that location has on how much you spend on rent. Obviously, the cost of living varies greatly by location, not only affecting your rent price, but also your gas prices, your grocery prices, your utility costs, the cost of eating out at restaurants, and even the cost of labor. So I'm here on Zillow and I'm going to focus on Orange County, which is where I live. As you guys can see here in Costa Mesa, the minimum price for an apartment, a really, really small one, is going to be in the low 2000s. So you guys can see this place is $2,200 per month. It's a studio, 500 square feet. So obviously very, very small. If you want to get into a standard house here, it's going to be at least $5,000, $6,000 a month. For example, this house in Costa Mesa is $5,500 per month. It looks like a nice spot, but yeah, of course, $5,500, that's a lot for rent. And as you guys can see, the space is not that crazy. If you want to live in Newport Beach, as you guys can see, the rent prices are pretty crazy. You'll be looking to spend between $4,000, $5,000 to even $10,000 or $20,000 per month. For example, this house right here is $15,000. It's about 3,700 square feet. Obviously, a very nice house in a great location, but it's not that modern. And so yeah, even within a 20-mile radius, the rent prices can drastically vary. Now let's go to another city like St. Louis, Missouri. As you guys can see here, the rent is a lot lower, right? It looks like a lot of things can be under $1,000 per month, and $2,000 should get you a pretty decent spot. So this place right here is $870 per month. It's 750 square feet. And yeah, obviously that's drastically different than Costa Mesa or Newport Beach. This would probably cost between $2,000 to $2,500 per month where I live. But that really is the beauty of it, right? You can sort of choose where you live. It's much harder to sort of choose your income than it is to choose where you ultimately decide to live. Especially with more and more jobs becoming remote these days, earning a set income can allow you to live very different lives in different cities. So let's say we have someone, her name is Alexandra. She makes $60,000 per year or $5,000 per month, and she lives in the Midwest, right? And so as a result, she can rent a spacious 2-bedroom apartment for around $1,000 per month, which is well within the 30% rule. However, if she moves to San Francisco or New York, then she might need to spend $3,000 per month for a way smaller studio apartment. And that would be 60% of her gross income. So in this situation, I'd say it's just impossible for her to move to one of those cities where a studio is $3,000. You'd actually have like no money to spend on anything else. You wouldn't be considered house rich since you're not building any equity by paying rent. You'd just be considered rent rich, which just means you're poor. So yeah, if you can move locations and keep your current job, it can make life a lot easier. But of course, I know there are a lot of factors that make it so that, a lot of people can't leave where they're living. It could be family, it could be friends, it could be your job or your business. But I will say that within a 20-mile radius of where you currently live, there probably is a decent variance in rent prices. And so that can be something that you guys can do if you want to spend less on your rent, but remain in the area. Now let's talk about some other tips you guys can use to be able to get between that 20 to 30% rent ratio. The first is find a roommate, right? So whether that be a significant other or just an actual roommate, splitting the cost of living in a spot can really reduce your monthly costs of rent. That's essentially because a 2-bedroom is not twice as expensive as a 1-bedroom, and a 4-bedroom is not twice as expensive as a 2-bedroom. There's economies of scale when it comes to housing. And yeah, that's because a bedroom is 100 to 200 square feet normally. And if you just add more of those, but keep the same living room, obviously the cost per person is going to go down. If you're young, actually living with roommates can be really beneficial, especially if you find people that have similar goals as you. They can hold you accountable, and you can even split other expenses with them, such as utilities and groceries. The next tip I have for you is actually choosing a specific type of job. That is finding a remote job. Usually for in-person jobs, the amount of income you get is pretty in line with the cost of living. So for example, if you live in SF and work there, you'll likely get paid more, but of course you need to spend more money to live. Whereas if you live in Dallas, Texas, your income might be a little bit lower, but your cost of living is also significantly lower. So what we can do is, find a job that's based in a high cost of living area and then live outside of the city or live somewhere else. Of course, this isn't possible for everyone, but if this is possible, that's something to definitely consider. You can also start your own online business, right? This is what I do. So technically, I don't need to live in Costa Mesa, California. I could live wherever I want in the world. And when you have that type of freedom, that's when you can really play the location game. You can even move overseas. For example, I can move to Bali and probably live off maybe $2,000 per month there. So if you're planning on moving soon and you don't know what to set as the maximum price on Zillow, now you have some more insight on this whole topic that every renter struggles with, and hopefully it can help you make more informed decisions about how much you spend, where you choose to live, and how much you allocate to all of your different living costs. Being able to say that you can afford something versus being able to say that you can smartly afford something are two very different things. And so again, when it comes to that percentage of how much you spend on your rent, I'd say try to keep it between 20 to 30% for most people. If you make significantly higher, make it even lower. And yeah, if you can have the discipline to follow that rule, you'll be in a much healthier financial situation. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys got some value from it, make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe for more content just like this. I make a ton of videos about personal finance, investing, and entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.